So basically, we have two companies. We have Global Bodyweight Training, and then Animal Flow. So Animal Flow was a component. It was like the movement component of Global Bodyweight Training. So if you think about Global Bodyweight Training, it was really focused on your feats of bodyweight strength. So muscle ups, handstand push-ups, human flags, your big statics.
Yeah.
And then the Animal Flow was kind of the movement component of Global Bodyweight Training.
Yeah.
But Animal Flow then kind of took on its own life. So it was so well received everywhere, and people really wanted to learn how to use it as not only a kind of standalone practice, but also something that they could integrate into all of the rest of their training modalities. So it really kind of was able to fit in. It's so pliable and malleable that we could fit it into so many other different training styles that the workshops really started picking up, and people really started picking up the video. And so it just organically spread.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We're here today with Mike from Animal Flow and Global Bodyweight Training. If you don't know much about Mike, Mike was just explaining basically Animal Flow and what he does. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike. How did you start your fitness journey?
Yeah, absolutely. I started in fitness since I was really a young guy. My dad was really into kind of weightlifting. My mom was a dancer. So they were always into fitness in one way or another. So I started lifting weights with my dad. That was kind of our bonding experience. So we would lift weights and hang out and train together. And I left the town that I grew up in and moved to LA when I was very young. So I just finished high school and I moved to LA. And actually, I wanted to learn more about my own training, wanted to learn more about nutrition. So I hired a trainer, and he was so influential and so inspiring that I was just like, man, I want to do what you do. You know? So basically, at a very young age, I got my first personal training certification, and I just started my training career right away because I knew it was something that it worked for me. It resonated with me. I wanted to do it. I wanted to help other people. Yeah. And so I did. I started training at a very young age, and then through the years, as most people do, I was just hungry to gather more information about different training styles, different modalities. So really got into Olympic lifts, really got into kettlebell training, really got into speed, agility, quickness training, and became a medical exercise specialist. So really got into the corrective side of exercise. And then eventually I was just at a phase where most guys, get, where I was just like lifting a ton of weights. I was quite a bit heavier and bigger than I am now. And I'd reached my goal of being about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. And I didn't feel well. I didn't move well as much as I knew about proper periodization and programming. I was like, man, shoulder hurts, my hips, my spine, it's just like there's always something up. And I was like, I'm too young to feel this old, and there's just something wrong. I need to listen to my body. And that's when I really got into bodyweight training. So I'm like, all right, so if I put down the weights, I need to learn more. So I got into gymnastics at 30 years old, which was pretty insane. Then got into, that kind of led to parkour and free running, and then got into hand balancing, circus arts, got into breakdancing, and figured out that not only do all of these different disciplines absolutely complement and integrate into each other, but they all use very similar components. And animal movements were a big component of a lot of these different styles. So what I did is I took animal components, and I'm always the first one to say I didn't create animal movements, they've been around forever. I just figured out a way that we could use these kind of basic animal components to figure out how to improve the function of the human animal. So how can we mimic animals to improve the function of the human animal? And that was really what kind of began the basics of Animal Flow. But then on the flow component, I really had learned so much from parkour and so much from breakdancing about how to use our surroundings and navigate through our environment, creating movement windows, allowing an opportunity for a hand to go through or a leg to go through, creating a very fluid connection with the ground, dissipating all of these ground reactive forces, things like that. So that kind of built the flow component. So really the Animal Flow is that it has animal components, but really that's about improving the function of the human animal. And then you have the flow components, which is about integrated fluid movement. So really Animal Flow in its most basic form it's a movement-based program, movement-based ground program that's about connecting our bodies to themselves through the floor.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's about. So it's about reconnecting us to our bodies, being conscious with our movement, because, let's face it, a lot of people are just disconnected from their systems, disconnected from their bodies until they experience pain.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to consciously connect people back to their bodies, and we're using something that was very powerful to us during our developmental stages, which is the floor.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we rarely return to the floor for movement exercise. So that's really kind of the goal behind Animal Flow, is it is this practice that's all about how we manipulate our body in space and how we communicate our body through our hands, through our feet, and their connection to the ground.
Yeah. Now, I think it's really cool. And if you could go back in time, what would be your foundation? Would you start with, starting from the ground, mastering your own body weight, or would you do what you did already, which was, I guess, have a weightlifting approach first and then go over to the body weight movements? What do you think?
Well, that's a great question. I think, I'm a big advocate of that idea that if we follow the opportunities that are given to us, then we're kind of on that path that we get to travel down, and we get to make decisions depending upon what pops up. And so I don't think I would change anything. I think the only difference is going back to just a body weight approach after having seen the loaded side, to go back and figure out, okay, I need to figure out how this thing works. And then now when I am ready to go back to loaded training, I feel like I'll be so much more efficient and stronger than I was previously.
Yeah,
because I really took time to say, all right, I need to learn how this thing works.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a really nice way to go, all right, push the limits this way. Now let's see what I can do if I take everything else, just strip everything else away, relearn how my own body works, and then eventually I'll go back to loading it again, and I'll really get to see really what my capabilities are. But not only that, but also how to integrate all these different modalities.
Yeah.
So how to get the most out of my body weight practice, how to get the most out of loaded training, how to get the most out of integrated movement training. So I'm a big advocate of that idea that it's like, there is no one way, it's always.
Yeah.
It's just figuring out how the pieces fit together. Because let's face it, our body is the only thing that we'll have the rest of our life. It's the only thing that we have the rest of our life. So our message is always, you have one body, learn how it works, and learn how to use it.
Yeah, no, very cool. And, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I love that idea of having a three-dimensional approach to fitness. It's, for so many people, it's a linear approach. It's just running, or it's just weightlifting, or not even weightlifting, it's bodybuilding or isolation exercises, or maybe it's just gymnastics, and it's not looking into can you, and I love this concept of flow. Like the idea of learning to not just get from A to B, but A, B, C, D, because it keeps moving. Talk to us a little bit more about flow. When did that click for you? Like that movement was, because in dancing it's something that we see. People don't give dancers, I think, enough credit. You have people do things that are just like, that's amazing, because you went from A to Z. Talk to us about flow. When did you connect and realize that was really important?
Well, I think one of the things about just like you said, the flow component is all of those things: gymnastics, dance, martial arts, parkour, breakdancing. They all have flow components that are just it's just specific to that discipline, but it all has a flow component to it. So I think for me it was started when I started with gymnastics. I was like, okay, so these pieces fit together, so it's like, all right, this routine or this floor routine or whatever it is, it's these pieces that are put together in a flow. Same thing with parkour. Parkour isn't just about doing one vault or one transfer or one precision jump. It's about how you literally, and just like you said, how you go from point A to B, then back to A, and then to C, and then it's like literally how you traverse your surroundings, and how you do that most effectively and most efficiently and most fluidly. So that was a big thing to me. It's where like you could see a wall, a ledge, see all these things and be like, okay, I can see how that could work together. It's where you can go from here to here to here to here. But it wasn't really until I got into breakdancing where I was like, oh, okay, now I really, really begin to understand this, which is, you have these movement windows, you have an opportunity to bring, an arm through or a leg through, and then how does that set you up for the next movement? And that really, that really was like, oh, that clicked with me. So whenever I started with the Animal Flow stuff, I tell everyone, look, it took me about 3 months to create the Animal Flow program. It's taken me every day since to learn it, and every time I teach it, I learn more about it. And whenever I first started with the animal flow stuff, I thought, because I was coming right out of breakdancing stuff, I thought that we were supposed to go fast. I was like, all right, this, the animal flows, it's about moving fast. It wasn't until I spent some actual time with it and realizing how much power there is if you actually slow it down.
Yeah.
And so what we teach all of our instructors is how to really focus on our transfer of energy, our fluid transfer of energy. So if you're here, how do you take that energy, and does it continue to roll in one direction? Does it change directions? Does it go up and then go down? How do we dissipate it and try to minimize that ground reaction force that we're getting back into our body?
Yeah.
So it's like, how can we be as fluid and water-like with the ground and be as minimal with our impact, and that way we can dissipate and spread energy throughout our entire body, our joints, our hand contact, everything.
Yeah.
So becoming more efficient at our flow practice is something we're always striving towards.
Yeah, very cool. And I like what you said about being like water. It's a good quote by Bruce Lee. And it took me so long to really understand what that meant. And it, for me, it came through weightlifting. Understanding how to get under a jerk a little bit better. And when I finally realized, okay, I don't want to fight this. I want to go with it. It all sort of clicked. And like I was saying, it's awesome to see these different disciplines get together where you have, breakdance and dancing all culminating to this one thing. What's been your biggest inspiration with creating Animal Flow? What would have been your biggest inspirations in general for fitness?
Yeah, I think, I think it was kind of that entire idea of getting away from the weights and realizing, one, that I wasn't nearly as athletic as I thought I was. And realizing that I got the opportunity to be really bad at a lot of things, which was really cool because, look, our bodies are designed to become better and become more efficient at any given task as long as it's consistent with the challenge. So just that idea of, okay, I have this one thing, I need to learn how to use it and how to be able to do these, these things which are feats of strength or feats of balance or what we call pinnacle exercises. So what really kind of inspired me for both the bodyweight side, because with Global Bodyweight Training we have a program called the Bodyweight Athlete Program, which is like a progressive calisthenics, and then with the Animal Flow, so the cool thing about progressive bodyweight training really is it's something that seemed absolutely unattainable to you at one point will eventually be just your warm-up. And I love that idea. I love that idea that if you're consistent enough with your practice, that your body will adapt.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of those ideas that really inspired me when I first started. Exploring all of those different movement disciplines definitely inspired me when I first started.
Yeah.
And then as I've kind of continued to learn more about bodyweight training, my respect for it just keeps getting deeper and deeper. And so literally every time I go in and I practice, because we call it a practice and not a training session, every time I go in and I practice, I learn a little bit more about my body. And the cool thing about it is I'm in a situation where I can teach other people about their body. And it's amazing that how much, when you take away everything else, how humbling it is to teach someone that all they need is their load, they're already under load, and how they experience their load. So can we put them in a situation to where they reach fatigue, like total fatigue, like they cannot do this movement and it's just a body weight movement. And that's inspiring and that's powerful. And so always just being able to convey that message is something that just really keeps me amped up and really spirited, and I'm just so excited to be able to share it with other people.
That's awesome. What about people specifically? I'm always interested in knowing who are the masters of the masters. Who are people that really inspired your, train of thought or just movement as you were going through fitness?
Well, what I did is I'm a big fan of, everyone needs a coach, everyone needs a teacher. So what I did was anytime that I wanted to learn a discipline, I found the best person that I had access to. And so I would find a great coach and I would hire them and I would spend time with them, and from being a coach and talking to another coach, I could really have that opportunity to get down to the detail of what I was missing, how I could be better, use their experience. So a lot of those coaches that I had personally were just super influential. So just super influential to me, and still buddies of mine. But the whole movement thing is so popular right now. There's a lot of other guys that are doing some great stuff. Ryan Hurst at Gold Medal Bodies is just awesome.
Yeah.
That guy's doing some great movement stuff. Al Cavadlo, the Cavadlo brothers with Dragon Door and the Progressive Calisthenics certification.
Yeah.
Those guys are doing amazing stuff. There's a lot of people out there who are really pushing the kind of body weight movement world, and every day we're kind of inspiring each other. So like what we'll do is we'll do, Facebook, videos where we'll tag someone else in it, and then they'll do a response.
Yeah.
We created this thing, hashtag what makes you move.
Yeah.
And it's a very simple, idea. What makes you move? Hashtag what makes you move. And then it can be anything. It can be dance. It can be weightlifting. It can be, flips. It can be, tricking. It can be anything. What makes you move allows all these people to kind of collectively come in and show, literally what inspires them to move.
Yeah.
So to go back to your question, I think what inspires me the most is all of the people in the community.
Yeah. So, they collect some of all the people who are obviously moving this bodyweight movement, forward into fitness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. Now, most people listening are CrossFitters, or within that sort of realm of fitness. How can this benefit people who are in very fixed patterns right now?
Yeah. So I think that's just what you said is going to be the key. So if someone's used to moving in predominantly sagittal plane, so if they're doing a lot of their Olympic lifts that way, if they're doing a lot of their pulls that way, they're doing their jumps that way, they're running that way, they're rowing that way, if they're doing med ball slams that way, all of those movements are sagittal plane dominant. So what happens is our body is an accumulation of the loads that it experiences on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So basically, we're always loaded by gravity. That's one load. So if we're standing or we're seated or we're lying down, our body's affected by that load. If we go in and train and we're affected by those loads, so those loads that we're always experiencing, they're always in that same plane of motion. What happens is we overload that pattern, which is very common for us to then get injured in that pattern if we're already overloading it.
Yeah.
Or we get so fixed in that pattern when we try to do a different pattern like rotating, that's where the injury comes in.
Yeah, because it's just your body's not ready and not prepared for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about Animal Flow or any multi-planar movement program is that you're allowing the body to communicate and be loaded differently.
Yeah.
Right? So one, when we have our hands and feet in contact with the ground, it's a very rich environment for us to send and receive information. So now our body has to move as this integrated global unit. So it has to communicate with itself.
Yeah.
So just the level of communication internally is very high. But also it gives us the opportunity to do a lot more rotary movements. So if we're doing lateral traveling apes, which is a lateral movement, but it's asking the body of a lot of rotation through the press and the movement. Or in a lot of our transitions, a lot of like under switches, side kick throughs, things like that, it's a lot of transverse, a lot of rotary movement.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who's doing a loaded sagittal plane movement, and then you just add in their circuit or add in their superset, some transverse stuff or some rotary stuff, now you're looking at building a body that's more functional because it is strong and powerful and has stability through multiple planes of motion. So how does Animal Flow integrate into CrossFit? Wherever you want it to, really. And that's the kind of cool thing about Animal Flow is that it is so pliable and malleable that you can put it in anywhere.
Yeah.
But what you'll get the most out of is, again, reconnecting the system to itself and then breaking some of those patterns that they're so used to.
Yeah.
Also, the intensity is going to be high. The intensity is going to be high with Animal Flow because you literally have to use all of your muscles.
Yeah.
More muscles require more oxygen, more blood flow. So it can be part of an intense workout. Even in maintain the integrity, you can slow it down and it can be a very intense workout.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I saw with gymnastics. One of the most challenging things when you're always trying to go fast is then slow things down. Yes. And it's I think that's one of the things that makes the mastery of gymnastics or bodyweight movements so challenging because it's can you be perfectly still and show that you're a good L-sit position, or just whatever the position is that you want to be in. Can you be okay with being still? Which for some people, if they never are, it's extremely challenging. It's a whole different system, stabilizing muscles that don't tend to work, having to work. So yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying.
And to add to that, a lot of times when we go fast, we have the ability to just skim over a lot of those imbalances.
Yeah.
You know, we can hide our imbalances and our leaks in our chains.
Yeah.
But when you slow it down, everything gets exposed and revealed.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, all right, you have to show your imbalances, or you have to work on them.
Yeah.
You know, we can't just go fast and just glaze over them. So
Yeah.
it is nice to say, okay, if you're always doing something at a high tempo, to just slow it down and then really focus on the mechanics of the movement.
Yeah.
So I think that's also would be kind of a nice transition for CrossFitters who are into high intensity to then just be like, bring it back down, slow it down, see how slow you can, you know, crawl in this quadrupedal position. You know, and it doesn't have to be tempo intense. It can be movement and coordination intense.
Yeah, definitely. Now, keeping on with that specific topic, what are obviously CrossFit houses the sports side of it, and there's competitions and, you know, people compete in it.
Mm-hmm.
What's something that bodyweight training or animal flow or both what's something that you would like to see tested in CrossFit? I'm not sure how familiar you are with the competition side of things, but what's something that you think would be a good test for someone to just go out there and do or put in a competition?
You know, that's tough. That's a tough answer for me, or it's a tough question for me, because with animal flow, there's so many different ways you can see it, right? So I mean, you may have someone who looks at animal flow purely as a practice, almost like a yogic art, right? So it's like, all right, they're gonna go and they're gonna do their animal flow practice, and it's all gonna be about fluidity and transition. Or you have someone who does, you know, more loaded training stuff, and they're going to put two pieces together, right? So they're really working on, okay, I'm going to break this pattern with this, but there's so much possible depth with it, you know. So to standardize it and even put it in a competition would be very tough. It would be very tough. However, when you get into the calisthenics side, now you're looking at where the skill practice, you could get much more specific to, let's say if someone were doing a handstand push-up. Like, I would love to see a freestanding, super strict handstand push-up, you know, and super strict, slow false grip muscle-ups, like, you know, human flags, you know, like, I mean, that kind of stuff, to where it's like, you can't fake it, you can't cheat it, like, you either can do it or you can't do it, you know, and not to say any of that other stuff can be faked or cheated or anything like that, just to say that some of those calisthenics,
you need mastery of the movement.
Yes, exactly.
And that's another, so I guess we'll segment into the other side of things. Like, I know you have a pretty vast experience when it comes to, you know, advanced training for bodyweight movements, like with muscle ups and all that sort of stuff that, you know, CrossFitters might be interested in. Let's talk about pulling. So we spoke lots about being on the ground. Give us your thoughts on pulling and how to improve pulling mechanics, pulling strength. You know, I know that the average person thinks of pulling as pull-ups, and that's the end of the story. I have friends who I've gone rock climbing with in the past, and they show me a whole new world of pulling strength.
And that's the thing, and so I'm glad you mentioned that, because we always talk about, or I always talk about, pulling patterns are going to be like your yin and yang to your floor push stuff. You know? So if you're spending a lot of time on the floor, then you're always, for the most part, going to be doing in a push pattern. So the way that you complement that and you load the body differently is you do a lot of pulls. So, and when we talk about pulls, that's like climbing, swinging, hanging. You know, so it's not just pull-ups, right? It's not just body rows. I'm a big fan of transitions. So, like, you know, if you're first of all, let's just say, can you hang? Can you hang just full body, dead hang for a minute? You know? Can you do it for 5 minutes? Can you do it for one arm? You know, can you transition? Can you hang from one arm and rotate and transition to something else? You know, can you go out and swing and do like laches, or what we call in parkour, where you like go from one bar to the next? Right? Can you rotate, pull your legs up? Can you climb, use your entire body and like a hang quadrupedal movement? All those things, there's so much good stuff there that loads our body differently, you know, because even just the action of grabbing something and pulling our body up towards it is very different than pulling a lat pull down towards our chest, right? Just the message that's sent to the motor control center is completely different. So that's rich in information, that's rich in strength, because now we have our actual connection, our grip strength coming down, connecting through these fascial slings into our pelvis. So there's a lot of great stuff there. What I really like, just like you mentioned, rock climbing is an incredible pole workout that you can combine with your legs.
Yeah.
You know, having, a lot of CrossFits have these really great racks, but rarely do you see people really utilizing them and there's so much possibility for that, so it's not just kind of going from monkey bar to monkey bar, but there is a lot of potential for rotary swing patterns and like learning how to do gibbon swings and things like that, where you're not only connecting, but you're connecting your hand, holding your entire body up and rotating, and there's so much good information there for shoulder stability, mobility, how the obliques work with the pelvis through the shoulder into the grip of the hand, with the head, with the ocular response. Like, there's so much good stuff there. And if you're doing a lot of push stuff, the pulling stuff's gonna be really fantastic for that. The other thing that we would love to see is, I know a lot of CrossFits have rings. It'd be great to have to where you could transition from ring to ring, because again, that brings in that swing pattern, and then just, I know that there's a lot of kipping muscle up stuff, with not so much focus on strict slow muscle ups. Is that right?
Well, I guess a lot of people, it depends, but for a lot of people they skip that. They see the strict muscle up as being too challenging, so they'll bypass it. A lot of the high level competitors can all, do strict muscle ups, but the average person, so I guess the majority of people who make up the community, sometimes will skip that. We'll skip that part.
Mm-hmm. And I think my main reason for that question was just because the false grip that's required in a strict muscle up is so powerful. And to be able to hold that position and even just do very slow controlled muscle ups is just fantastic for forearm strength, for how that communicates into the rest of the body. Yeah, it's just so much good stuff.
There is. We'll just take a small break, guys, and we'll be back shortly. Some of those things were just so challenging, and I had a client the other day, and she comes in and she's like, I'm pretty fit, and I've done it all before. And I showed her okay, can you false grip? I may have been a little bit mean at the start. I jumped on a bar and I hang just on a false grip on a bar.
Right.
And I said, can you do this? And she jumps up. She's like, how did you do that? I'm like, okay, let's try and do it on rings. And then she's like, I want to get to a muscle. I'm like, well, you have to show me this false grip first.
Yeah.
There's people sometimes they see the end of the highlight reel and don't realize what it takes to get there. Are you recording? Awesome. So let's talk about that. What are steps that you feel people are missing in their fitness? People seem to want to jump straight away to a muscle up. They want to jump straight away to a handstand walk. What are things that you see people missing in the everyday fitness?
I think for the most part they're missing, one, establishing where they're at today.
Yeah.
Then two, figuring out a progressive roadmap to get there. So a lot of times, just like you mentioned, we call them, in the Bodyweight athlete program, we call them pinnacle exercises. So like a pinnacle exercise would be your slow false grip muscle up, it would be a freestanding handstand push-up, be a strict single arm push-up, a pistol squat. Then in your statics, you'd have like a back lever, human flag, handstands. So basically what you're looking at is so many people try to go to the pinnacle exercise. They're like, I want to learn how to do a handstand push-up or a muscle up. And then they try it, and they either can't do it right away, so then they go and try something else. Or they can't do it, and so they figure out how to do like a compensatory pattern to get it, to at least to get the movement close to what it actually is. But they haven't built a foundation for it, so their likelihood of getting injured is much higher. So, and it's usually pretty ugly. You can usually see that they didn't go through the actual, process. So what we always teach is we do like an assessment of figuring out what your threshold is in what we call a pinnacle line. So if the end exercise is a muscle up, where are you in that line of exercise or in that line of variations to get a muscle up? Once you establish your threshold of where you're at, cool, now you know exactly where you need to train. Once you get X amount of repetitions with perfect form at a perfect tempo with your breathing pattern, fantastic. Now you can progress to the next one. Now you can progress to the next one. But it is that self-limiting exercise. It's that style where if you can't do it, if you can't do this variation of it, there's no way that you can do this. You have to own each progressive step on the way there. And I think the big thing that people lose sight of is because we are in such a culture of like immediate
self-gratification. I want it now, I want it today, I want it tomorrow at the latest.
Yeah, so just to have that conversation with someone where you're like, hey, this may take you a year, it may take you longer. It's tough for people to really conceptualize that, but I think it's a very important conversation that we need to have to really set parameters on things and set expectations. Where if someone's like, I want to learn how to do a freestanding handstand push-up, cool. It may take you a year just to do a handstand. Then after that, it may take you another year to be able to combine the maximal strength with the coordination, with the stability component, to be able to do an actual freestanding strict handstand push-up.
Yeah.
So that's just a conversation that I think we need to get really used to having with people. It's just like, look, what are your goals? That's awesome that those are your goals, but remember, you have your entire life in this body. So what's your rush? Build a foundation, because just building a foundation for these pinnacle movements is going to be more than enough to help get you in some seriously good shape.
Yeah.
It's like just the progress, just the trip there is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Progress is success.
Yeah.
And progress comes in a lot of different ways, and I feel that sometimes people want the gratification of extra load or being able to perform the movement quickly. Now, sometimes you get progress by just doing that same movement just better.
Yeah.
Now, talk about mastery of a movement. You explained before that it took you 3 months to create the program, but then the rest of your life to master it.
Yeah.
How long is it realistic for people to take to get to the stage where they can do a muscle up, where they can do a handstand, those sort of things?
That's such an open question, because it really depends on what type of commitment they want to put into it time-wise.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, we'll give someone the building blocks and we'll say, okay, this is your threshold, so this is where you need to train. This is going to be your tempo. This is going to be how you're going to connect your breath to it. If they're consistent enough, and then of course it's how often they're saturating the pattern, so how often they're using it in their workout.
Yeah.
Those are all determining factors. So if someone's willing to put in the time, the effort, really willing to maximize the potential mastery of it, then we'll see progress. But I think what happens is people really get into that thing of self-defeating themselves to where they want it faster.
Yeah.
And it's just not going to come faster unless they spend more time in it.
Yeah.
So, even just to put things in perspective, we always talk about, look, how long did it take you to learn how to walk on your feet? And, usually around 12 months for us to end up walking on our feet upright. And our feet are designed for us to stand on, our hands are not.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, how much time did you spend on your handstand last week? And if it was a total of 20 seconds, then bro, it's going to be a while before you can stand on your hands. So it's like you always have to put it in perspective and just be like, what are you willing to put into this goal? What are you willing to put into obtaining this skill? And then that becomes this whole conversation on its own. So it's like, you can have a fantastic approach to technically how you would train for it, but if they're not willing to put in the psychological time and the actual physical time, then they're just not going to get it. So I think it's just having that very realistic conversation of, this is going to take some time. You need to acknowledge every little step of progress that you make along the way.
Yeah, definitely. When I first learned how to do handstand walking, I think it took me 6 months of every day doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I'm still not very good at it. But I couldn't believe how long it took. And it's just sometimes I think we always compare ourselves to other people. You see someone who maybe learned it faster and you go like, well, they did it quicker, so I should be able to. And I think what you said about every person needs to see where they're at makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think with that, especially when you get into some of these things that are body weight strengths, or feats of strength, where if someone has been training in gymnastics since they were a kid, their abilities are going to be much different than someone who's trying to get into some of this stuff as a 30-year-old. And I think that's where that whole conversation needs to be. Again, it's like, look, man, you don't have any kind of basis of this, where someone else, you might be like, wow, look at where they're at, but their road is not your road.
Yeah.
And where they came from is not the same as where you came from.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the big things with like people who have trained literally from the time they could walk in gymnastics, it's hard for them to relate to us regular people, you know, who are like, all right, I'm trying to learn this as an adult. You know, so that's where you really do. You have to put things into perspective and be very realistic about your goals. But with time and consistency, our bodies are designed in such an insane manner that they can adapt to any consistent challenge. You know, we just have to make sure that we saturate it and we give it the opportunity to. But then also that's in that perfect practice thing, where if we're sloppy with our practice, then that's not good information for our body to use to acquire skill.
Perfect practice makes perfect.
Absolutely.
Now, you would see, you know, throughout your seminars, a whole range of people coming through. Mobility is a big thing in CrossFit, and you know, getting people mobile enough to do a lot of the movements. What's your approach to mobility and improving people's, you know, joint mobility, flexibility, and things of that nature?
Mobility is a huge thing. I think, you know, mobility is, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, you get these buzzwords in the industry that some of them hold weight and some of them are just kind of fluff. I think mobility is great. I think it gives a lot of traction to the idea that we need to be able to move. You know, it's like, all right, mobility, everyone knows that you need to have mobility. Not everyone knows what that means, but it makes the fact that you can move cool. All right.
I heard about mobility. I want to.
Exactly. So, you know, similar to like functional training. You know, like functional training has been a buzzword in the industry forever, and it's been, you know, it's been used, abused. It's been good. It's been bad. You know, but mobility is one of those things. It's like, everyone needs to, and it's a little bit more clear on what mobility is. So there are a couple different things, and one of our big kind of, you know, one of the things that I'm always an advocate of is a multidisciplinary approach. You know, so if you have mobility techniques that use myofascial release and, you know, stretch bands, cool. If you have stuff that's just more body weight, like hip boxes, cool. I'm a big fan of getting range of motion and mobility out of necessity. So that's why I always use like a movement approach to mobility. So versus like, okay, I'm just going to kind of create more movement at this joint, create more movement through the entire system, but put that joint in a scenario to where it needs to be more mobile. You know, and so sometimes we do that with specific crawl stuff. Sometimes if it's a pistol squat, we do a different variations of pistol squats where we'll load the ankle differently, and then the body has to adapt out of necessity versus like, all right, here's a TRX strap for you to hold on to while you do this. Here's a kettlebell to counterbalance while you do this. We'll put the body in a different position and load it differently with gravity to where it will gain mobility out of necessity. You know, and so I always kind of like that approach of like, make the body work for it. You know, don't give it a crutch. Like make it figure out, be you know, strategic with your approach to it, to where your body goes, oh, okay, I need to be more mobile to be able to do this. You know, then that mobility that you're gaining will stick. Because what happens sometimes is, you know, you can isolate a joint and get it to move more freely, but if you don't integrate it into the system, then it's not, you haven't really gained that range of motion.
Definitely. Look, I think it's been an awesome talk. It's been really insightful. If you love fitness, you know, you should be able to geek out on this. If people wanted to find out more about you, where can they do so?
Either animalflow.com.au here in Australia, or just animalflow.com in the States. The other one is also, like you mentioned earlier, globalbodyweightraining.com. Or Mike GBT at Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Mike. Really appreciate this.
Cool.
It's great. Thanks, guys. Take care and peace.
What I'm gonna do to Erica Badu, I'm gonna have some fun. What do you consider fun? Fun, natural fun.
I said, what I'm gonna do with my man Busta Rhymes, I'm gonna